Good afternoon. Talking in the language of cricket, I think the first technical session has to be played with the Duckworth-Lewis formula. Friends, we've had torrential rains in the inaugural session. In fact, I was part of the proceedings and it was so heartening to see that it was a grand inaugural session. My hearty compliments to the outgoing President, Dr. Sharaf. My congratulations to the incoming President, Nikitaben Badeka. Greetings to all in the AIFTP family with which I have been associated for more than 3 decades. And therefore, it's always a pleasure to come here. Friends, I would, with the permission of my dear friend and chairman, in fact, his being the chair was an added attraction for me to be here in this session today. Dr. Shivaramji has been a very dear old friend. And I'll just take, before I come on this subject, because this subject had to be, friends, reincarnated. You'll ask me why. The reason was, I think when this convention was planned earlier in this year, on the 19th of August, we were to present the official report and the draft bill of our task force to the Honorable Finance Minister. And we felt that this was perhaps an opportune time to discuss the entire provisions of the new bill. But for obvious reasons, because the government's focus is immediate and short-term firefighting, therefore, they have said that we would like to take a little time in going through the elaborate provisions and consideration of the draft bill that has been presented, because it is for the next more than 50 years that we are looking at. You know, we've already had the present act for more than 50 years. But I would like to, at the outset, just take 2 minutes, as I mentioned, to say a few things which are within my domain. Because being a task force member, until and unless the government's clearance comes that we can talk about it in public, you'll obviously appreciate the restraint. But I think there is no reservation in my acknowledging the fact that the task force was as such immensely benefited by the recommendations of AIFTP and in particular the contribution, the sterling role played by Shri S.R. Vadhwaji. Friends, I think we should give him a big round of applause. In fact, I was very eagerly looking forward to Dr. Shivaram also. I had continuous deliberations with him. Vadhwaji was very kind and as articulate and as vocal as he is. He was frank and forthright in expressing his views. I may only say here that we have, friends, because a couple of things that I can rather say, there's no problem. And what I can say is, if and when the bill sees the light of the day, you will find that from the present Income Tax Act, which is around 1,250 pages and running into 750 sections. 750 because we have all those ABCD alphabets and whatnot. So from 1250 pages and 750 sections, we have been able to simplify it to bring it down to 381 pages and 400 sections. That is something which I can share with you without any reservation. And there is no ABCD. We have clean, straight sections. There are no provisos. There are no explanations. So the core task of simplification and rationalization, and in fact, I would say AIFTP, as a strong body as you are, Shivramji and Nikitaben now with you in the chair, I think you can take it up with the FM. It will be in the right opportune time to ensure that it is put for public consideration. And then the year 2020 will be at the time when you will really have to have brainstorming sessions on that. Friends, the task force, we really put in work of over 21 months. We had 89 meetings and 1,054 man-hours of work. So it was a deeply satisfying and rewarding experience. In fact, for me, it was, as I was telling Dr. Shivaram, that practically the last 4 years has been such a rewarding experience, because immediately prior to the task force, we worked on the Simplified Tax Committee, headed by, as you know, Justice Ishwar. And that Justice Ishwar committee, again, we worked for 15 months. We gave 2 reports and invested over 256 hours. But honestly speaking, it was a great learning for me. And I would say it is not an exaggeration. In fact, the very concept of e-assessment was born when we were part of the Simplified Tax Committee recommendations. And that idea caught the imagination of the Honorable Prime Minister. And I would say the credit should go to the Honorable Prime Minister for taking this fast forward. And in fact, he said that after our report was presented, he said even while, the overall tax bill may be taken up for consideration, the e-assessment scheme should not wait. And therefore, as you know, friends, for assessment year 2018-19, the notices which came to be issued, they have all been taken on this. So let me now come to the provisions. In fact, as Dr. Shivaram said, and I mentioned Duckworth-Lewis because, friends, rest assured, we will slightly play with your appetite, because otherwise I am already beyond the lunch hour, Janak Bhai. But we will not play very truant. My idea is I'll just take the next few minutes to highlight some points. And as Dr. Shivaram said, we would like to have the maximum views, suggestions, and points from your side, which I believe AIFTP should now on be presenting to the authorities. Because if you all recall, and those of you would have seen, on 4th of December, the National E-Assessment Center and the Institute of Chartered Accountants, they had a live webcast of an interaction on issues and challenges. And when issues were placed, even the PCCIT heading the NEEC was not clear. He said, we'll have to apply our minds, how it is going to happen. So friends, it is something like this. I am reminded of the great words of Alvin Toffler, the great philosopher and thinker, who said that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Friends, this is what is going to happen. This morning, those with 40 years, 50 years of practice were being felicitated. but they'll have to completely change their notions. As Dr. Shivaram said, it is going to be IT for IT, information technology for income tax. We've already had your e-returns over all these years, e-processing. Now it will be e-assessments. And to my dear friend Samir Jani, in Saurashtra, anything they say, it starts with E. That's the typical Gujarati. So I often say that, the whole new complexion of tax practice is going to change. It will be, just as they say, virtual offices. We have, just to give an example, we have a huge new building of the income tax department built in Ahmadabad, the new building. You go there and you may feel for a moment that you've come on a day which is a holiday, because you'll hardly find people, anybody in the corridors. There'll be no vehicles around, too many, because it's all virtual. Try to ask your NRI friends, do they know what is the address of the IRS office in the United States of America? Nobody knows. The IRS is what you get through your mails or through your actual, maybe sometimes, the deposits that come into your account as refunds. So friends, the e-assessment is completely, and as Shivaramji said, you'll have to now learn what is risk management. You'll have to learn what is artificial intelligence, what is machine learning, because these are the terminologies of the IT Act, which have been introduced here. And friends, the pilot project has begun. In October, when all the notices were complete for assessment year 2018-19, as you understand, by 30th of September, they said that out of more than 2.5 lakh cases selected for scrutiny for assessment year 2018-19, they gave the exact number. The Revenue Secretary, Ajay Bhushanji, said 58,319 cases are selected under the new scheme of e-assessment. And this scheme, friends, of course, is well known to you. It has been circulating around for the last few months. So I have no intentions. In fact, a request was made, and I'm glad that I didn't come with a PPT, because this is not a PPT session. This is something, friends, we have to, in fact, build the future. We have to create, the path for paving reforms. And therefore, I am just going to raise some issues for consideration, and I would be most happy if the chairman and friends, you in the audience, some of the very eminent and esteemed members who have views probably to share on the subject, would take opportunity to share these things. So going to, friends, first of all, people ask me, Mukesh bhai, what inspired you? Because when we made our first recommendations as part of the Simplify committee, we said we should go for e-assessment. And people ask me, why e-assessment? Friends, we talk of high-pitched assessments. We talk of, taxpayers without even being served show cause notices, being bombarded with huge additions. There is bias, there is prejudice, there is expectation, and it is human nature, friends. When there is interface, all kinds of problems can arise. So, borrowing from the global experience, it was found that let systems work. We are at that level of IT that even the department can afford to, on the basis of a risk management strategy that they may have worked out, they may rely on artificial intelligence and machine learning to handle these assessments. And talking from the point of view of the department itself, just think about it, friends. You have so many big cities in India. And you see, people actually choose their jurisdictions based on select strategies, just as you would want a particular life partner of your choice, by going through that. So you try to choose that I want to, though I may have my business here, I want to go to a particular jurisdiction for X or Y or Z reasons. Friends, why? Because these practices, they give rise to unhealthy situations, and more than that, the biggest leakages of revenue take place on account of that. And therefore, to get greater efficiency, accountability and transparency, EAT, EAT, as we would like to simplify and put it, friends, you need to focus on the E-assessment where the entire emphasis is on faceless and jurisdictionless. Now, the faceless was started during these past couple of years. But still you knew that here is an officer. You were not supposed to go to him and he was not supposed to call you. But then, friends, it is human nature. There is always the temptation that you may give him a call or he may give you a call without keeping it on record. And therefore, the E-assessment during these past 2-3 years, though the very fact that things had to be on record, because earlier we knew that papers would vanish out of the file. Now those things are not possible. In fact, with the DIN now, virtually everything is minutized, in all respects. And therefore, these are some of the very big positives. But the jurisdiction-less, friends, because, of course, there also, please understand, it's not that you are giving an examination. In an examination, it is possible to conceal your name and number, and therefore neither the examiner nor you would know. Here, the examiner knows you by name, because it cannot be anonymous. But the entire model is such, you certainly don't know. And in any case, friends, the system is that even the examiner is not supposed to directly communicate with you. Because, as you know, friends, I'll just very quickly take you through, the setup. As you know, under the new E-assessment scheme, there are 4 units. The assessment unit, the verification unit, the technical unit, and the review unit. And as far as the assessment part is concerned, you have the National E-assessment center and you have the Regional E-assessment center. So all your notices that you have started receiving, they are from the National Center, because that is the center which will communicate, which will have the complete overall charge and control. It is like the tower which is there on an airport, which can see everything. After the notice is served based on their risk management parameters, friends, the good thing is, which has started happening over these past few years, is gone are the days when you could be taken for a ride, being told that your case is picked up for scrutiny. No. You are specifically and clearly told that your case is selected for scrutiny for 1, 2, 3, 4. And though it is not clearly written in the scheme, Mr. Chairman, I believe, my personal view is that they will need to, because even for these couple of years, when we had the ITBA, scrutiny, e-scrutiny, the guidelines were that when it is picked up for a specific issue, if the officer wants to enlarge the scope of assessment, he has to get authority in writing from his senior authority. So I would say transparency is there. You receive the notice, you know very clearly that it is for, these points. Now, once your notice is received by you, then your case is assigned to a regional e-assessment center. And that would be done keeping in view the optimum, mobilization of the resources. And it's easy to understand, friends. If there are pharmaceutical companies all over the country, they have peculiar points for consideration from the departmental angle. Today what happens, if there are 100 places where these companies are assessed, there will be 100 assessing officers. And they may take all different kind of views. Now here, by and large, considering the specialization, if, okay, pharma companies, let them be taken by a team or a group. And the concept of e-assessment, friends, at least as I understand, is going to be operating on team. Because we used to deliberate in the task force, and we used to say that if you are giving this charge only to one person, the possibilities there may still be the, breakthrough of that. But they say that it will be a teamwork. And I'll explain how it is going to be teamwork. So you are reasonably well insulated against any malpractices. So, you have the regional e-assessment center which will focus itself on issues. They'll ask questions. They'll get information and feedback from you. Whatever you state need not be taken at face value. Say, for example, there are issues of Section 68. There are issues of valuation. There are issues which, you have made certain claims, they need to be verified. So for these purposes, you will have a verification unit. And the verification unit will carry out its own verifications, including examination, cross-examination, etc., and will give that feedback to the assessment unit, which will utilize that information. There will be a technical unit, friends, particularly when it is issues relating to valuations, where there are issues where, a legal view is to be taken. I would say, this should augur well, because today what happens, assessing officers in a small place, they are not aware of the legal position. The judgments of sometimes even the Supreme Court. Even after, I remember TRF Limited came when Supreme Court very clearly laid down the judicial position in regard to bad debts. Friends, officers in small places, they were not even following this. They would say it is premature. Now, the law of the land is something, but here at least the technical unit will guide the assessment unit on the very typical technical issues. There will be issues relating to accounting standards, Ind AS. Today officers don't understand those things. At least you will have the benefit of technical unit. And friends, after this entire process of churning of assessment is completed, the good thing is, if there is any variation that is proposed, in fact, the idea is that a draft assessment order would be prepared, and that draft assessment order, I'm glad that in order that if the assessment unit has probably missed something, they expect that there will be a review unit which will independently cross-check. So, the possibility, suppose the assessment unit is likely to go for an inflated edition, the review unit will keep in mind that after all, this is also to meet the test of appeal. And therefore, we need to check. So basically the assessment unit working in cohesion with the verification unit, the technical unit and the review unit all put together. Friends, I believe the quality of assessments under the e-assessment scheme is definitely expected to be far better. Because at least the person who is framing an assessment, even if he has, those wishes in his mind, would not be able to really do things only for the sake of quid pro quo. So I think this, to me, is something which is very important, and therefore it makes the scheme very attractive. What is also, I think, I really like about this scheme is that you are going to get, our biggest concern was, of course, there are some practical issues also I'll be taking up, but, the biggest concern was, and this is which we used to deliberate, that, okay, many a times, if your explanations are accepted, you have no worries. But suppose you have put across a point of view. And even after all these screenings that go through the different units, they are not able to accept something. Friends, the good thing is there will be something like a draft assessment order. And you will be given, along with a show cause notice, what have you to say on this. And that is the stage when, of course, I think even they do not know how they are going to go into the logistics, but it is very clear in the scheme that the taxpayer, the assessee, will have, if he so chooses, the prerogative, the right to have video conferencing. And many times, as I said, there are limitations in what you write and what the other person tries to understand, and therefore you can exercise video conferencing right. Now all these things, even video conferencing will help you, even if suppose there is a disagreement and they make an addition. The advantage would be if you go in appeal, the video conferencing recording, you can use it as evidence. See, today what happens, additions are made and you are virtually feel at so many times that you are stabbed at the back. It is a high-pitched assessment. You have tried to make so many submissions orally, and you step out of the officer's chamber thinking that, oh, I have really done a good job. And the guy was listening just like Buddha, without giving any reactions. And then he puts that bombshell on you, and nothing that you spoke or articulated or explained gets into the order, and it's a one-side version. So at least, friends, everything that you give now will be there in the digital form on record. Everything that you speak or explain or articulate will also be part of the proceedings. So I think these are the reasons why I am quite upbeat on the system. Not to say that there are issues which need consideration, and there are issues which also need very firm representation, where I believe AIFTP can play a very key role in highlighting these. Some of the issues I am very glad, Mr. Chairman, sir, in the paper that has been presented by the young professionals who have assisted you. You have taken up some issues. Some issues came up my mind as well. I would very quickly go through them and try to finish up in time so as that we can have some broad discussion on this. As I said, one of the issue which people have doubts, but I don't have, and that is whether the assessment will be limited only to the issues that are raised in the notice, or it can be omnibus. In fact, let me tell you, in scrutiny assessments under the e-assessment of big corporates, you are told, Because now there is a very clear concept of a limited scrutiny and a full scrutiny. So if it's a full scrutiny, then obviously anything can be looked in. If it is limited, my view is it has to be limited. And suppose the proper procedure is not followed, you can definitely challenge it in law. Friends, the second issue is, which is going to be a practical aspect, is the video recordings. Now, how are they going to work out? In states, where there are, today you have so many income tax offices. Will all income tax offices have those, structures or logistics for video conferencing? Or will people have to go to, the bigger destinations? I think these are still gray areas, but we'll have to focus. The language barrier. When you are to give, say there is a sale deed of 100 pages. Now, here in your own place, at least you have an officer who understands what it is. But if that sale deed is expected to be translated, because the regionally assessment center is in a completely different jurisdiction and you are required to do all that, friends, the time element involved, the procedure, the cost, these are all going to be issues. Even upload, issues we have already gone through. Even today you are told that you have to ensure that your single attachment does not exceed, particular PDF, limit, in terms of the storage, MB and all that. So these are things which you will have to overcome. Then your access to submissions. Why should you be called upon to submit everything afresh before the Commissioner appeals when it is there on your e-filing portal? Can the CIT appeals not, have access to that directly? See, these are all aspects, relating to the actual practical implementation. Friends, another thing is they have used this term risk management strategy, but they have not spelt out anywhere what is that risk management strategy going to be. There will be a ticklish issue. I am a taxpayer in Gujarat. Gujarat High Court decision is in my favor and that has to be followed. But the regional e-assessment center is sitting somewhere else. Whose jurisdiction will you consider? My view is it should be jurisdiction of the taxpayer. But these are issues which will again have to be considered, friends. Quickly coming to virtually the last topic that I wish to take up, and then, friends, we can go for discussion. And that is, we need to represent on some things. Because, you see, what has happened is, they have brought out a scheme only under those two enabling sections of 143. And the scheme says it all. Now, whether the provisions of the scheme duly support or justify, in terms of letter and spirit, the provisions which are there in the Act. There are several anomalies. I am not going into the hair-splitting. Time, if it had permitted, I had lots of things to discuss, but with the paucity of time, I'll go into only some basics. I would say, friends, AIFTP should take up this firm and clear. Joshi ji is here, he's been doing it for last so many years. Be loud and clear. You must take up boldly these issues that after all this verification, review, and everything, why do you still want revision? Friends, it is very difficult to understand that when so much of quality work has gone into framing of an assessment, do you still think that one commissioner sitting somewhere should say in the jurisdiction that, no, I have a point of view that it is prejudicial to the revenue? I think this is, Vadvaji, you will be a better judge to take up or consider such issues. Then, friends, there will be a necessity to align so many provisions of the Act with the scheme. Even today we know we have problems of CPC. Now the issues are under the scheme, they say that after the assessment is framed, the penalty, prosecution, rectification, demand, recovery, all this will come back to the jurisdictional officer. It is something like this. Today CPC does something in your case and then says now the rights are transferred to the jurisdictional AO. You go to the jurisdictional AO, he says, how will I take this on me? It is CPC who has done this. You fight with them. Friends, this issue of ownership and accountability qua these different units, I think this is likely to be a ticklish issue. Just imagine, you know, the assessing officer, your jurisdictional assessing officer has not even been a party to the proceedings. But he is told, no, you will decide on penalty. You will decide on prosecution. You will decide on rectification. Friends, these are going to be some ticklish issues. I think we will have to handle this. And then there is a mischievous provision in the scheme which says that there is a power to transfer the case to the jurisdictional AO, considering the complexities. Now, this is something I think we need to raise our voice. It will strike at the very root of the e-assessment. Just because they do not wish to give you, you know, the privilege or liberty to enjoy such a robust scheme, they may say that we are transferring your case to the jurisdictional office. We do understand, okay, for now, you say such cases, 153A to 153C, you cannot have e-assessment. 147 also you want, you know, personal assessments, fine. But I believe some of these issues which are there, they have to be considered, and you must ensure that, you know, we do not get into this. Friends, I would only like to conclude by saying that when solving problems, as they say, we must dig at the roots instead of just hacking at the leaves. So this scheme does have challenges, does have issues which need consideration, but then the benefits of them are so overwhelming. And as I have articulated my subject, this entire philosophy and practice of e-assessments, friends, it will pave way for the pioneering reforms that we need, you know, in terms of what we've always been talking about, efficiency, accountability, and transparency, friends. So let us hope for the best. I think it's time that we change our way of looking at things. As I said, we will need to, you know, I started with Toffler. I would like to end with a beautiful share of one of my favorite shires, who has so articulately said that if you don't change with the times, with the winds, you will be nowhere. And sometimes the correction is required, you know, maybe just a wee bit, but if you focus right, you will reap your fruits. And he has so beautifully said, नजर को बदलो तो नजारे बदल जाएंगे, नजर को बदलो तो नजारे बदल जाएंगे, सोच को बदलो तो सितारे बदल जाएंगे, कश्तियां बदलने की जरूरत नहीं है. He says, कश्तियां बदलने की जरूरत नहीं है, दिशा को बदलो तो किनारे बदल जाएंगे. Friends, this is what we are looking forward to. And as we march on to the new year 2020, let us look forward to a new era of practice, a new era of reforms, and something that we all can stand up and with pride. When we were, friends, having the national anthem, you know, what kind of goosebumps do we have? Let us feel that we, as taxpayers of this country, can say proudly that we have a model tax system in the world. Thank you very much.